The convoy never saw her. Three armored vehicles crawling through the Eastern European snow, their thermal optics sweeping the frozen landscape for threats that weren't there. The real threat was 2,000 meters out, nestled in the skeletal remains of a bombed-out factory, breathing slow and steady in the kind of cold that turns exhaled breath into crystallized death. Major Elena Reeves had been in position for 6 hours. Her ghillie suit was dusted white with fresh powder. Her heart rate hadn't exceeded 62 beats per minute since she'd taken the hide. The M40A6 rifle cradled in her arms was an extension of her body, the Schmidt and Bender scope, showing her a world measured in millimeters and fractions of seconds. The wind was the problem. It always was. 12 knots from the northeast, gusting to 15. At this range, with this cold, the bullet would drift. She ran the calculations in her head the way other people counted sheep. Muzzle velocity 2,700 feet per second. Time of flight 2.8 seconds. Coriolis effect, compensation 0.4 mils right. Wind drift 1.2 mils left. Net adjustment 0.8 mils left. Her finger rested outside the trigger guard. Not yet. Not until the moment was perfect. The lead vehicle stopped. A man emerged. High-value target. The kind of man who started wars from the safety of armored convoys, who sent young soldiers to D while he collected power and wealth. Intel said he was responsible for 3 embassy bombings, 2 assassinations, and a chemical weapons transfer that killed 47 civilians in a Syrian market. Reeves didn't care about any of that. She cared about the mission. The mission was simple. 3 targets. Clean, no witnesses. The second vehicle's door opened. Target 2, then the third, target 3, all standing in the open, all thinking they were safe. Amateurs. Her radio crackled once. A single click. Confirmation from the extraction team. 5 clicks south. She was cleared hot. The scope's reticle settled on the first target's chest. Center mass. The wind gust dropped. She felt it in her bones before the wind meter confirmed it. The world compressed into a single moment of perfect clarity. Squeeze. Don't pull. Like her father taught her. The rifle bucked. The suppressor reduced the report to a heavy cough that the wind swallowed whole. Through the scope, she watched the first target crumple. The others hadn't even registered the sound yet. She cycled the bolt. Smooth, mechanical, beautiful. Second target turning. Too slow. The reticle found him. Squeeze, down. Third target running. Amateur mistake. Lateral movement at this range meant nothing. She led him by 8 inches. Accounted for the fresh wind gust. Squeezed. He dropped mid-stride. 3 shots. 4.2 seconds total. The convoy guards were still trying to locate the threat when she was already breaking down the rifle, stuffing it into the deployment bag, melting back into the factory's shadows. By the time they found her hide position, she was 2 kilometers away, moving through the snow like a ghost. Her radio crackled. Ghost actual confirmed 3 tangos neutralized. Exfil in 90 seconds. She keyed the mic once. Confirmation. Words were unnecessary. In the darkness, her gloved hand found the compass in her pocket. Old. Brass. Worn smooth by 2 decades of war zones. Her father had given it to her in 1998 before his final deployment. Before Iraq. Before everything changed. She squeezed it once, then let it go. There was work to do. There was always work to do. But for just a moment in the frozen silence of Eastern Europe, she allowed herself to whisper 4 words into the wind. Still earning it, Dad. Then the ghost disappeared into the night. The Pentagon Annex conference room was built for secrets, soundproofed walls, SIAF-rated security, the kind of room where careers ended and wars began. 3 generals sat on one side of the table. Major Elena Reeves sat on the other, still wearing civilian clothes, her boots still carrying mud from 3 different countries. General Thorne spoke first. He was old-school Army, Gulf War vintage, the kind of officer who'd commanded armor columns through Iraqi sand and understood that war was about metal fuel and the will to use both. His eyes were the color of gunmetal, and they hadn't softened in 40 years of service. Major Reeves, thank you for coming on short notice. She nodded once. Waiting. Soldiers didn't speak before generals unless asked a direct question. Her father had taught her that before she'd learned long division. General Mack cleared his throat. He was younger than Thorne by a decade, but looked older. Too many combat deployments, too many funerals. He'd been in Fallujah when the fighting was worst in Kandahar, when the Taliban pushed back. He had the face of a man who'd seen the future of warfare and didn't like it. "We have a problem," Matt said. "West Point." Reeves allowed her eyebrows to rise a fraction of an inch. It was the most surprise she'd shown in 3 years. General Pierce, the logistics man, the quiet calculator who'd kept armies fed and armed through 2 decades of desert wars, leaned forward. 3 incidents in the past 18 months. Covered up, buried. But they happened. A culture of entitlement, arrogance, cadets graduating with the wrong priorities. Some of them are already in command positions, and they're getting people killed. Thorne slid a tablet across the table. Reeves picked it up. Photos, after-action reports, a second lieutenant in Afghanistan who'd ignored his NCOs and walked his platoon into an ambush. 12 casualties. A captain in Syria who'd refused to listen to a female intelligence officer and missed a critical threat assessment. 4 dead Marines. A major who'd never learned that leadership meant listening, and his battalion paid the price. They all came from West Point, Thorne said, and they all shared one trait. They believed their legacy, their family name, their pedigree meant more than their competence. Reeves set the tablet down. "You want me to teach them a lesson?" "No," Thorne said. "We want you to audit them. Deep cover. Go in as a cadet, assess the culture, identify the rot, report back." Reeves looked at the 3 generals, 3 stars each, enough brass to start a war or end one, and they wanted her to go back to school. "Sir, with respect, I'm a combat operator, not a teacher." Thorne's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Memory, pain, the past reaching forward. "Your father believed the most important battlefield wasn't in Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere overseas. It was here, in the academies, in the training grounds, where we teach young officers what it means to lead." He paused. Colonel David Reeves founded Project Chimera because he understood that wars are won by minds, not muscles. He died proving it. The compass in Reeves's pocket felt suddenly heavier. "Iraq, 2003, she said quietly. "Fallujah. Rescue operation." "He saved 14 soldiers that day," Thorne said. "Tier 1 operators pinned down by insurgents. Your father went in with 2 men and got them all out. He didn't make it back." The room was silent. Somewhere in the building a phone rang. Somewhere else a war was being planned, but in this room there was only the weight of legacy and the question of what came next. "Project Chimera," Reeves said. "You want me to use Chimera protocols?" Pierce nodded. "We need someone who can blend in, who can assess without being detected, who understands asymmetric warfare doctrine well enough to recognize when it's being ignored or misunderstood." Matt opened a folder. "There's a cadet there, Bradford Hartley III, family legacy going back to World War II. His grandfather was a general. His father works in the Pentagon. The kid has never failed anything in his life, and it shows. He's arrogant, entitled, and he's the senior class leader. If there's rot at West Point, it flows from him." Thorne leaned back. "Your mission is simple. Go in, observe, identify the systemic failures. Report back. We'll handle the rest." Reeves looked at the tablet again. The faces of dead soldiers stared back at her. Kids, really, 20, 22, 25 years old. Dead because their officers had learned the wrong lessons. She thought about her father, about the compass he'd given her in 1998 before his deployment, before Iraq. She'd been 12 years old, standing in their backyard while he showed her how to navigate by the stars. "A compass always points true north, L," he'd said, using the nickname only he was allowed. "But it can't tell you where to go. That's your job. That's leadership." She'd kept that compass through 19 years of war, through Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and a dozen other places that didn't exist on official maps. It had never steered her wrong. Reeves looked up, met Thorne's eyes. "How long do I have?" "Semester starts in 4 days. You'll be inserted as a transfer cadet. Average scores, unremarkable, invisible." "Ghost protocol," she said. "Exactly." She stood. The general stood with her. Military courtesy even in a room full of secrets. "One question, sir," Reeves said. "What happens when I find the problem?" Thorne's smile was cold and sharp as a knife in January. Then we fix it. Permanently. She nodded once, turned to leave. Thorne's voice stopped her at the door. Major, your father would be proud. Reeves didn't turn around. Couldn't. The compass in her pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Yes, sir, she said. Then she was gone. West Point looked like America's vision of itself. Stone buildings that had weathered 2 centuries of weather and war. Parade grounds where Grant and Lee and Eisenhower had marched. The Hudson River flowing past like liquid history. Every brick was a sermon. Every hallway was a testament to glory. Cadet Elena Reeves, unremarkable in her gray uniform carrying a standard-issue rucksack, walked through the main gates and disappeared into the crowd. She'd spent 3 days preparing, memorizing her cover story, a transfer from a state school, decent grades, nothing special, no family legacy, no connections, just another mid-tier cadet trying to make it through. Her barracks assignment was deliberate, 4th floor, end of the hall. Maximum observation, minimum attention. She unpacked with the precision of someone who'd lived out of a rucksack for 19 years. 3 uniforms, 1 dress gray, standard issue boots polished to regulation shine but not beyond. A data slate loaded with textbooks and buried in encrypted files, the complete Crucible simulation technical manual. 1,247 pages of specifications, protocols, and exploitable weaknesses. She'd read it twice. The other cadets barely looked at her. Good. Invisible was the mission. Ghost was the protocol. But one person looked. Bradford Hartley III stood at the end of the hallway surrounded by his entourage. The Alpha Pack. 6 cadets from the right families, the right schools, the right bloodlines. They moved through West Point like they owned it. Because in a way they did. Hartley was exactly what the file promised. Tall, athletic, the kind of jawline that showed up in recruitment posters. Confidence that bordered on arrogance, then crossed the border and built a mansion. He watched Reeves unpack through her open door, and his lip curled in something that wasn't quite a smile. Fresh meat, one of his crew said. Hartley didn't respond, just kept staring, calculating, categorizing, dismissing. Reeves felt his eyes on her and didn't react, didn't look up, just kept unpacking, methodical and boring and utterly forgettable. After a minute, Hartley laughed. Not at her, at the concept of her. Then he moved on his pack, following like pilot fish behind a shark. When they were gone, Reeves allowed herself the smallest smile. First contact made. Assessment arrogant, entitled exactly as briefed. The mission had begun. The next 72 hours were an exercise in deliberate mediocrity. Reeves ran the morning PT at exactly the average pace. Not slow enough to draw attention, not fast enough to stand out. She scored in the middle third of her marksmanship quals despite being able to put rounds through the same hole at 500 meters. She answered questions in tactical doctrine class with technically correct but uninspired responses. She was aggressively average, and she watched everything. Hartley's pattern became clear within 48 hours. He ruled through a combination of charm and casual cruelty, smiled at the instructors, mocked the weaker cadets, used his family name like a shield and a weapon. His grandfather's portrait hung in the Hall of Generals. His father's signature was on half the Academy's equipment contracts. Bradford Hartley III had never faced a consequence in his life, and it showed in every word, every gesture, every dismissive laugh. He targeted the vulnerable, the scholarship kids, the ones without connections, the ones who couldn't fight back without risking their futures. He targeted people like the person Reeves was pretending to be. On the 3rd day in the mess hall, he made his first move. Reeves was carrying her tray, navigating the crowd, when Hartley deliberately stepped into her path. She stopped, waited, said nothing. "Excuse you," Hartley said loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Reeves looked at him. Flat eyes, no emotion. "Sorry, sir." The sir was technically incorrect. Cadets didn't call each other sir, but it was the kind of mistake a nervous transfer student might make. The kind of mistake that marks someone as an outsider. Hartley's smile widened. "You new here, Ghost?" "Yes, sir, transfer." "From where?" "State school, sir." He looked her up and down. Slow, deliberate. The kind of look designed to make someone feel small. "Let me guess, scholarship." "Yes, sir." He laughed. His crew laughed with him. Synchronized mockery. Well, welcome to the real academy. Try not to embarrass yourself too badly. He moved past shouldering her slightly. Not hard enough to make her drop the tray. Just hard enough to remind her of the hierarchy. Just hard enough to establish dominance. Reeves didn't react, didn't respond. Just found a seat in the corner, ate her meal, and watched. High above in the glass observation deck overlooking the mess hall, General Thorne stood with his tablet watching the same scene through security cameras. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the railing. Easy, General Matt said quietly beside him. She's got this. He put hands on her, Thorne said, on a superior officer. She's undercover, he doesn't know. He should know better anyway, that's the whole problem. On the tablet, Reeves finished her meal, cleaned her tray, and walked out. Her biometric monitor showed her heart rate at 64 beats per minute. Unchanged, undisturbed, like she'd just been served coffee, not disrespect. Thorne watched her go, saw the way she moved. Economical, efficient, every step measured. It was the walk of someone who'd crossed deserts and mountains and frozen tundra with 100 pounds of gear. The walk of someone who'd learned to conserve energy because your life might depend on it 3 days from now. It was her father's walk. David Reeves had moved the same way. Like gravity was negotiable and distance was just a number. She's so much like him, Thorne said quietly. Matt nodded. That's what scares me. David never backed down from a fight, not once. And look where it got him. It got him a Medal of Honor and a memorial wall at Fort Bragg. It got him killed at 42. Thorne was quiet for a long moment. On the screen, Reeves disappeared into the crowd of cadets, invisible and unremarkable. She's smarter than he was, Thorne said finally. She knows when to be a ghost. Let's hope so, Matt said, because Hartley's just getting started. The library became Reeves's sanctuary. It was one of the few places where solitude wasn't suspicious. Cadets studied alone all the time. She claimed a table in the back corner, surrounded by shelves of tactical doctrine and military history, and did what she did best. She learned. The Crucible simulation was scheduled for the end of the semester. The final test, a billion-dollar facility that could replicate any combat environment on Earth. Mountains, jungles, desert, urban warfare. The AI was adaptive learning from each run, getting smarter with every iteration. To excel in the Crucible was to cement your future as a high-tier officer. To fail was to be marked for a career of staff positions and desk duty. Reeves pulled up the technical manual on her data slate. 1,247 pages of specifications written by engineers who'd never seen combat, but understood the mathematics of simulation. She read like she was defusing a bomb, carefully, completely, looking for the seams where theory met practice and the gaps where exploitation lived. By the second reading, she'd found 19 weaknesses. The thermal optics simulation had a refresh rate of 0.3 seconds. During the refresh, the system couldn't render heat signatures. A trained operator could exploit that window. The AI's resupply logistics followed optimized patterns. Predictable, exploitable. The sewer system beneath the urban environment wasn't monitored by motion sensors. An unintended gap in coverage. The secondary communications network, a legacy system from 1987 Red Team exercises, was still embedded in the code. Accessible if you knew where to look. Reeves knew where to look. She made notes in her head. Committed nothing to paper. Ghosts didn't leave trails. Across the library, she saw Hartley and his crew. They weren't studying. They were laughing loud enough to disturb everyone confident enough not to care. One of them was imitating an instructor. Another was showing off photos from a weekend leave in New York. Hartley was holding court, the king of his small kingdom. He saw Reeves watching and raised his voice. Some people study. Some people are warriors. Guess which one wins wars? His crew laughed. Reeves went back to her reading. But in her mind, she was already 3 steps ahead. Already planning, already ghost. In her pocket, the compass her father gave her felt warm. Like he was there. Like he was watching. Like he was teaching her to one last lesson. Earn silent, prove loud, L, she could hear him saying. It was 1998 again. She was 12 years old, standing in their backyard in North Carolina. He was home on leave before deploying to the Middle East. Before Iraq. Before everything. What does that mean, Dad? He'd knelt down eye level with her and tapped the compass in her small hands. It means you don't waste energy telling people how good you are. You show them when it matters. You earn respect in the quiet moments. And you prove it when the world is watching. And what if they don't believe me? Then you prove it again and again until the truth is louder than their doubts. And if they still don't listen, he'd smiled then, that crooked smile that made her mother laugh and made generals nervous. Then you've learned who to trust and who to leave behind. She kept that compass for 25 years, through middle school and high school in West Point the first time when she was actually a cadet, through Ranger School and Special Forces selection, and finally Project Chimera, through Afghanistan's mountains and Iraq's cities and Syria's deserts and a dozen other wars that didn't have names. The compass always pointed north, but it couldn't tell her where to go. That was her job. That was leadership. Reeves closed the technical manual and stood. The library was emptying. Evening formation in 20 minutes. She had to maintain the cover. Average cadet, unremarkable, forgettable. But as she passed Hartley's table, he stuck out his boot. Not far, just enough to be in her path. A test, a power play, the kind of casual cruelty that men like him used to remind everyone of the hierarchy. Reeves saw it a full second before it happened, saw the setup in the way his friend leaned back, saw the anticipation in their eyes. They wanted her to trip, to stumble, to give them the satisfaction of her embarrassment. She stepped over the boot without breaking stride, didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge it, just kept walking. Behind her, she heard the frustrated exhale, the moment of confusion. They'd set a trap and caught nothing but air. Ghosts don't trip, ghosts don't fall, except when they choose to. The stairs of legacy were West Point's cathedral, a massive sweeping flight of granite connecting the mess hall to the academic wing. Each step was rumored to be carved from bedrock taken from famous American battlefields: Gettysburg, Normandy, Iwo Jima. To run up them was a rite of passage. To stumble on them was considered a bad omen. The morning of the Crucible briefing, the stairs were crowded, hundreds of cadets flowing up and down like a gray river. Reeves climbed with her rucksack properly secured, her posture, regulation perfect, her mind already 3 hours ahead to the simulation briefing. She was on the third step when Hartley made his move. He came from behind, fast his crew around him like a wolf pack. She heard them before she saw them. The heavy, confident footsteps of people who'd never learned to move quietly. "Excuse me, Ghost," Hartley said, his voice dripping with false courtesy. Reeves stepped to the side. Standard protocol, senior cadets had right of way. But as Hartley passed, he deliberately clipped her heel with his boot while shouldering past her. "Oops," he said. The sarcasm was thick enough to choke on. The impact was minimal. Any normal person would have recovered. But the granite was unforgiving, and Hartley had timed it perfectly. Her ankle twisted, her balance broke, and for a heart-stopping second, she was airborne. Time compressed. Her body knew what to do before her brain gave the order. 19 years of combat training activated in the space between heartbeats. She twisted mid-fall, protecting her spine, distributing impact across muscle instead of bone. Parachute landing, fall technique drilled into her at airborne school, refined through 100 combat jumps. But she couldn't make it look easy. That would break the cover. So she let herself fall hard. The scrape of canvas against stone, the sickening thud of body hitting granite, the loud hollow clatter of her helmet bouncing down several steps. Her rucksack flew open, contents spilling across the stairs. Data slate, dog-eared copy of Sun Tzu's Art of War, the brass compass, emergency rations. The laughter in the stairwell died instantly. Hartley stood over her, hands on hips, a smug smile plastered across his face. "See, too fragile for this world. Some people just aren't cut out for the pressure." Reeves lay still for 3 seconds. Face down, silent. No one moved to help her. The other cadets were frozen, caught in the orbit of Hartley's authority, too intimidated to defy him, too conditioned to question the pecking order. Then she began to move, slow, deliberate, like performing a drill. She pushed herself to hands and knees. Her cheek had a fresh scrape, blood small but visible. Her right leg favored slightly, a limp that would last the rest of the day. But her hands were steady. One by one, she collected her belongings, picked up the data slate, checked the screen for cracks. None. Replaced it in the bag, retrieved the book, placed it carefully. The compass went into her pocket, the rations back in their pouch. Finally, she retrieved her helmet, inspected it for damage, secured it to the pack's exterior straps. Then she stood. Her expression hadn't changed. Placid, neutral, the mask of someone who'd been hit before and knew the only way through was forward. She shouldered her rucksack, adjusted the straps, looked up at the remaining flight of stairs, and began to climb. Her pace was even, unbroken, the limp barely perceptible. She didn't look at Hartley, didn't acknowledge him, didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. She just climbed. The silence that followed her was louder than any scream, more damning than any accusation. It was the silence of a professional who just encountered a minor predictable environmental hazard. The cadets parted for her, their eyes wide with a mixture of pity and a strange newfound fear. They didn't understand what they were seeing, but they felt it. The absolute absence of weakness, the void where panic should have been. Hartley's smirk faltered. He'd expected tears, anger, a complaint to the instructors. He'd expected validation of his dominance. He got nothing. He got a void. He'd thrown a rock at a ghost and the rock had passed right through. High above in the darkened glass of the command observation deck, General Thorne leaned forward, his knuckles white on the railing. "Get me her file," he said to his aide, his voice a low growl. Not the academy transcript, her service jacket, everything. On the security monitor, Reeves reached the top of the stairs, disappeared into the academic wing. Her biometric readout showed a heart rate of 67 beats per minute, 3 beats higher than baseline. That was all, 3 beats, for being assaulted and humiliated in front of hundreds of witnesses. Thorne knew that response, had seen it before. In Bosnia, in Afghanistan, in Iraq. It was the physiological signature of a Tier 1 operator in mission mode. When your brain shut down everything except the objective. When pain was just data. When humiliation was just noise. It was the signature David Reeves had shown in Fallujah, walking into an ambush to save 14 soldiers. The signature he'd shown when he died. "Sir," the aide asked quietly. Thorne didn't look away from the screen. "That fall, the way she distributed impact. That's not cadet training. Sir, that's Project Chimera. That's her father's doctrine." He turned his eyes hard as artillery shells. "We need to move up the timeline. Hartley's escalating faster than we thought. The crucible is scheduled for this afternoon, sir." "Good." Thorne's smile was cold and sharp. "Let's see what our ghost can do when the gloves come off." The crucible briefing room smelled like anxiety and floor polish. 200 cadets packed into stadium seating, watching the main screen, where a holographic display showed the simulation arena in all its high-tech glory. Major Carson, the lead instructor, a combat veteran with 3 deployments and a face like weathered leather, stood at the podium. "The crucible," he began, "is designed to push you beyond your limits. It will test your tactical decision-making, your leadership under pressure, and your ability to adapt to chaos. The AI controlling the simulation learns from every action you take. It gets smarter. It gets harder. And it does not forgive mistakes." The screen showed footage from previous runs, urban combat, insurgent attacks, ambushes, the kind of asymmetric warfare that had defined 2 decades of Middle Eastern conflicts. "You will be divided into 2 companies," Carson continued. "Alpha Company will be assigned a conventional force role, full equipment, air support, armor. Your objective is to seize and hold a simulated urban center." The Alpha Company cadets, led by Hartley, erupted in cheers. Carson waited for silence. "Bravo Company will be assigned the insurgent role, limited equipment, handicapped communications, numerically inferior. Your objective is to resist as long as possible and make Alpha's victory costly." The Bravo cadets looked grim. Everyone knew this assignment. Bravo Company always lost, always. That was the point, to teach Alpha how to win and teach Bravo how to fail with dignity. In 47 runs of this scenario, Bravo had never won, not once. Reeves sat in the back row of the Bravo section, her data slate on her lap, the Crucible technical manual open in an encrypted window. She scrolled through her notes. 19 weaknesses, 19 opportunities. Her fingers found the compass in her pocket. Earn silent, prove loud. Carson continued. Alpha Company, you'll be briefed separately. Bravo Company, your designated commander is Cadet Morrison. A nervous-looking cadet 2 rows ahead of Reeves raised his hand. Kid looked about 19, fresh-faced, scared. He'd be dead in the first 5 minutes. Reeves knew this because she'd read the after-action reports from the last 10 Crucible runs. Bravo's commander was always targeted first. Standard counterinsurgency doctrine. Cut the head off the snake. The briefing continued. Equipment lists, rules of engagement, safety protocols. The cadets around Reeves were taking notes, studying maps, trying to plan. Reeves was doing something different. She was accessing the Crucible's secondary communications network. Her fingers moved across the data slate hidden beneath the edge of her rucksack, code scrolling past, firewalls mapping themselves. She found the legacy system from the 1987 Red Team exercises buried in the simulation's architecture like a fossil in bedrock. She created an access key, encrypted it with a Project Chimera protocol that wouldn't exist in any database the Academy could search. Then she sent a single test packet through the network. It came back clean, undetected, functional. She had her ghost frequency. The briefing ended. Cadets stood moving toward their assigned staging areas. Hartley passed her row, his crew around him laughing about something. He didn't even look at her. She was beneath notice now. A ghost. A non-entity. Perfect. In the staging area, Bravo Company was a mess of nervous energy and resignation. Morrison, their designated commander, was trying to rally them, but his voice cracked halfway through his speech. Some of the cadets weren't even paying attention. Reeves found a corner, set down her gear, checked her equipment with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times in places where mistakes meant death, not simulation failure. An instructor approached, old sergeant, the kind who'd seen everything twice. Cadet, you injured. He was looking at her limp. No, sergeant. Medical cleared. You sure that's a bad scrape on your cheek? I'm sure, sergeant. He studied her for a moment, saw something in her eyes that made him pause. Then he nodded and moved on. Reeves returned to her equipment check. Around her, Bravo Company prepared to lose with dignity. Above them in the observation deck, the 3 generals took their positions. Thorne, Pierce, watching, waiting. The main screen showed both companies. Alpha confident and organized. Bravo scattered and nervous. She's going to get crushed, Matt said quietly. Pierce was studying the data feeds. Her heart rate is 62. So, everyone else in Bravo is spiking above 90. They're scared. She's not. Thorne said nothing, just watched the screen showing Reeves in her corner, making final adjustments to her gear. She pulled out her data slate one last time, typed 4 words into the ghost frequency. Trust me. Go dark. Then she encrypted it and set it to send automatically when the simulation began. The countdown started. 60 seconds, 45, 30. Reeves closed her eyes, took one deep breath, found her father's voice in her memory. A ghost doesn't win, Elle. A ghost makes the enemy lose. 15 seconds. She opened her eyes. 10, 5. The simulation powered up. The world dissolved into digital chaos. And Major Elena Reeves, pretending to be an average cadet, became the ghost her father had trained her to be. The world exploded into chaos at 800 hours exactly. The Crucible's holographic generators hummed to life, transforming the massive warehouse-sized arena into a perfect replica of a Middle Eastern urban center. 3-story buildings materialized from light and processors. Streets appeared complete with abandoned vehicles and rubble. The air filled with the synthesized sounds of distant gunfire and the mechanical growl of armored vehicles. Alpha Company descended on the city like the wrath of God. Hartley commanded from a fortified position 300 meters behind the line of advance. His command post was a marvel of military technology. Wall-sized tactical displays showed real-time positions of every unit under his command. Satellite feeds drone footage, thermal imaging. He could see the entire battlefield from his climate-controlled bunker, orchestrating the attack with the confidence of someone who'd never tasted defeat. Alpha 1 advanced to checkpoint Bravo. Alpha 2 provide overwatch from the northwest corner. Alpha 3 bring up the armor. I want those streets locked down in 15 minutes. His voice boomed through the command net. Confident, aggressive, textbook, and exactly what Reeves had predicted. The simulated M1 Abrams tanks rumbled down the main avenue, their 120-millimeter cannons sweeping for targets. Bradley fighting vehicles followed their 25-millimeter chain guns chattering as they suppressed imaginary resistance. Overhead, the whump, whump, whump of helicopter rotors as Apache gunships prowled the sky, their thermal optics searching for heat signatures. Alpha Company was a hammer looking for a nail. In the observation deck, General Matt leaned forward. Aggressive opening. I like it. Hartley's using combined arms doctrine effectively. General Pierce wasn't convinced. His supply lines are overextended. He's pushing forward without securing his rear. Classic mistake. General Thorne said nothing. His eyes weren't on the main display, showing Hartley's triumphant advance. They were on a smaller secondary monitor, the one showing biometric data from Bravo Company. Most of the readings were spiking. Heart rates in the 90s and hundreds, stress hormones flooding systems, the physiological signatures of panic. Except one, Cadet Elena Reeves. Heart rate 63 beats per minute, blood pressure normal, respiration 12 breaths per minute. She was calmer now than she'd been climbing the stairs that morning. Thorne's fingers tightened on his tablet. He knew what that meant. Had seen it before in Kandahar, in Fallujah, in 100 other places where good soldiers went to do terrible things. It meant the ghost was hunting. Bravo Company's command structure collapsed in the first 4 minutes. Cadet Morrison, their designated commander, was killed by a simulated sniper round before he could issue his third order. The AI had learned from 47 previous runs. It knew to decapitate the insurgent force early and often. Panic rippled through Bravo's communication channels. We've lost the commander. Alpha's got eyes on our position. They're everywhere. We need to fall back. Fall back where they've got us surrounded. The cadets scattered. Some tried to organize resistance. Most just ran seeking cover in buildings that offered none, trying to survive an onslaught designed to teach them how to die with dignity. The main tactical display showed Alpha's advance as a wave of blue icons washing over scattered red dots. A massacre in slow motion, beautiful in its efficiency, terrible in its inevitability. General Matt nodded with satisfaction. This is what we want to see. Decisive action, overwhelming force. General Pierce frowned at his data streams. Bravo's command network just went dark. They lost their commander. Makes sense. No, I mean completely dark. Their main comm channel flatlined 30 seconds ago. Matt shrugged. System glitch, or they're surrendering early. But Thorne was watching that secondary monitor, watching the single flatline biometric that hadn't changed, hadn't spiked, hadn't shown even a flicker of stress response. She's not surrendering, he said quietly. She's hunting. In the digital hell of the Crucible, while Alpha Company celebrated their easy victory and Bravo Company dissolved into chaos, Major Elena Reeves did what her father had trained her to do. She disappeared. The bombed-out building she chose had been abandoned by 3 fleeing Bravo cadets 20 seconds earlier. Its walls were pockmarked with simulated bullet impacts. Its second floor sagged dangerously. It was exactly the kind of position any tactical manual would tell you to avoid, which made it perfect. Reeves moved through the shadows like smoke. Her data slate was out, screen dimmed to minimum visibility. Her fingers danced across the interface, pulling up code that shouldn't exist, accessing systems that weren't supposed to be accessible. The Crucible's secondary communications network appeared on her screen. The ghost frequency, the legacy protocol from 1987 that existed in the simulation's deep architecture like a forgotten room in an old house. She activated it with a Project Chimera encryption key and began to type. The messages went out to the scattered remnants of Bravo Company. Not broadcasts, not orders. Targeted whispers to specific cadets who were still trying to fight. The ones who hadn't given up. The ones who might listen to a voice they didn't recognize, telling them things that shouldn't be possible. The first message reached Sniper Team 2, a pair of cadets huddled behind a low wall, their simulated Barrett M82A1 rifles useless against Alpha's thermal optics. Every time they moved, the enemy spotted them. Every time they fired, counter-battery fire drove them back. Reeves's message was simple and precise. Sniper 2, Grid 4 Charlie, enemy thermal optics refresh every zero point 0.3 seconds. Fire between cycles. Window 0.28 seconds. Trust the math. The senior cadet stared at his data slate. What the hell, who is this? His partner, younger desperate, read the message twice. I don't know, but we're dead anyway. What do we have to lose? They set up the shot, watched the enemy patrol through their scope, counted the thermal refresh cycle. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. There, the tiny window when the system blinked. The senior cadet fired. Through his scope, he watched the Alpha Squad leader drop. Clean headshot. The thermal optics hadn't rendered his heat signature. The AI didn't know where the shot came from. Holy shit, he whispered. It worked. The second message reached Squad 3, pinned down in a basement with no escape route. They were out of options, waiting for the inevitable assault that would end their simulation. Squad 3, Sewer Access Grid 7 Bravo. Hartley's CP has unshielded power conduit 2.4 meters below foundation. EMP device. Detonation radius 15 meters. Move now. The squad leader looked at her team. Anyone know who's sending these blank stares? Screw it, we're dead anyway, let's try. They found the sewer access exactly where the message said, descended into darkness that wasn't being monitored by the AI's motion sensors, navigated by compass and counting steps. Emerged beneath Hartley's command post. The EMP device was standard issue. They'd trained with it a dozen times, but using it required precise placement and timing. The instructions came through in real time. Distance, depth, angle, like someone was guiding their hands. They set the charge, retreated to minimum safe distance, detonated. The electromagnetic pulse was invisible but devastating. Every electronic system within 15 meters died instantly. Hartley's command post went dark. His tactical displays flickered and crashed. His communications cut to static. For 3 critical minutes, Alpha Company's brain was dead. The third message reached the IED team. 4 cadets with simulated explosives and no idea where to place them for maximum effect. IED team, enemy resupply pattern vehicles every 8 minutes, same route. AI optimizes for efficiency, not security. Next convoy 4 minutes. Plant grid 3 Echo 3 Foxtrot 3 Golf. Stagger detonation by 2 seconds. Target track assemblies, not armor. They followed the instructions exactly. Placed the charges in a sequence that looked random but was mathematically perfect. Waited. The Alpha Company resupply convoy appeared exactly on schedule. 4 simulated Humvees loaded with ammunition, fuel, and replacement equipment, moving down the main avenue like they owned it. Because they did own it. This was a route they'd used 6 times already without incident. The first IED detonated beneath the lead vehicle's front left wheel. The simulation calculated the damage perfectly. Track assembly destroyed. Vehicle immobile. 2 seconds later, the second charge blew the convoy's tail vehicle. 2 seconds after that, the third caught the middle vehicles in a crossfire of shrapnel and concussive force. The entire convoy was destroyed in 6 seconds. $50 million of simulated equipment reduced to burning wrecks, blocking the main supply route. Alpha Company's momentum died with it. In the observation deck, General Pierce was on his feet. What just happened? Bravo just took out Alpha's entire logistics train. General Matt was studying his tactical display like it had personally betrayed him. That's not possible. Bravo doesn't have the coordination. Their command structure is gone. Then who's commanding them? Thorne pointed at the secondary monitor, at the single flatline heart rate. Not commanding, teaching. The messages kept coming. Precise, technical, emotionless, each one exploiting a weakness in the crucible simulation that nobody should know existed, each one turning Bravo Company from a scattered mob into something else, something dangerous. Mortar team, enemy artillery uses rolling barrage, time to advance. Pattern 8 minutes. Fire counter battery between volleys. Coordinates attached. Communications team. Jam Alpha's frequency 7. They'll switch to backup. Wait 90 seconds. Jam backup. Confusion window 3 minutes. Exploit. Assault team building 4 Delta. Blind approach from southeast. Alpha patrol passes every 6 minutes. Next pass 2 minutes. ambush, and fade. Each message was a lesson. Each lesson was a weapon. And the cadets of Bravo Company, desperate and cornered, learned fast. Because when you're losing and someone offers you a way to fight back, you don't ask questions. You fight. Hartley's voice cracked through the restored communications net. 3 minutes of darkness had felt like 3 hours. His command post was running on backup power. Half his displays were still offline, and his perfect battle plan was coming apart. All units report status. The responses came back broken and confused. Alpha 1, we've lost 3 squad leaders to sniper fire. Can't locate the shooter. Alpha 2, convoy destroyed. Resupply route is blocked. We're down to 60% ammunition. Alpha 3, taking fire from multiple positions. They're not fighting like insurgents. They're coordinated. Alpha 4, we've got casualties mounting. Request permission to consolidate positions. Hartley stared at his tactical display. The blue icons representing his forces were scattered. The red icons representing Bravo Company were everywhere and nowhere, appearing, striking, vanishing, like ghosts. This doesn't make sense, he said to his staff. They don't have leadership. They don't have equipment. How are they doing this? One of his officers, a cadet named Peterson, who'd never challenged Hartley before, spoke quietly. Sir, maybe they're not fighting the way we expected. Then we adapt. That's what leaders do. Peterson looked at the tactical display, at the spreading chaos. That's what they're doing. We're not. Hartley's face went red. Are you questioning my command? Oh, sir, Then shut up and find me whoever's running their operation. But there was no one to find. The AI reported Bravo's command structure as non-existent. Their communications were sporadic and encrypted. Their coordination was impossible. And yet it was happening. In the observation deck, the 3 generals watched the impossible unfold in real time. General Matt was pacing. Who the hell is running their operation? The AI says they don't have a commander. General Pierce's fingers flew across his tablet, pulling data streams, analyzing patterns. They don't. Look at the network traffic. It's decentralized. No command hierarchy. They're operating like a hive mind. That's not possible with cadet-level training. It's not possible with any level of training. This is Tier 1 doctrine, multiple independent cells operating toward a unified objective without central command. I've only seen this in classified after-action reports from special operations. Thorne pulled up the communication logs, tried to trace the source of the instructions flowing to Bravo Company. Hit an encryption wall that shouldn't exist in a training simulation. He recognized the signature. Project Chimera. His hands were shaking as he pulled up the secondary monitor. Reeves's biometric data, heart rate 63 beats per minute, unchanged, undisturbed. Gentlemen, Thorne said quietly, that's David Reeves's daughter showing us what we forgot. War isn't about who has the best equipment. It's about who understands the fight. The tide turned at the 28-minute mark. Alpha Company, which had started with overwhelming superiority, was down to 60% effective strength. Their supply lines were cut. Their communications were compromised. Their confidence was shattered. Bravo Company, which should have been destroyed in the first 10 minutes, was growing stronger. Each small victory bred confidence. Each coordinated strike proved the impossible was possible. They stopped fighting like cadets trying to survive. They started fighting like soldiers trying to win. The sniper team, emboldened by their success, began systematically eliminating Alpha's leadership. Squad leaders, platoon commanders, anyone who tried to organize resistance. Each shot fired between the thermal optic refresh cycles. Each kill invisible to the AI. The IED team, now understanding the pattern, seeded the entire urban center with the charges positioned at mathematical perfection. Not random, not scattered. A web of controlled detonation points that turned Alpha's numerical superiority into a liability. Every street became a kill zone. The assault teams, coordinated through the ghost frequency, began hit-and-run attacks that the AI couldn't predict because they violated every tactical doctrine in the database. They attacked from positions that should have been untenable, retreated through routes that shouldn't exist, struck where Alpha was strongest, and faded before reinforcements arrived. It was asymmetric warfare at its finest. Insurgency doctrine perfected. The kind of fighting that had humbled superpowers in Afghanistan and Iraq. The kind of fighting David Reeves had pioneered in 1984 when he founded Project Chimera and told the Pentagon that the future of war wasn't tanks and planes. It was ghosts. Hartley's command post had descended into barely controlled chaos. His officers were shouting over each other. His tactical displays showed a battle that made no sense. His carefully planned victory was becoming a nightmare. "Where are they getting their intelligence?" he demanded. "How do they know our movement patterns?" No one had an answer. "Sir, we need to consolidate. Pull back to defensible positions. Regroup." "Absolutely not. We don't retreat from insurgents." "Sir, they've cut us off from resupply. We're running low on ammunition, and our casualties are acceptable. We have superior numbers. We have superior equipment. We're going to win this." But even as he said it, Hartley could hear the doubt in his own voice, could feel the control slipping through his fingers like water. He'd never lost before. Not a simulation, not a test, not a competition. His entire life had been an unbroken string of victories bought with his family name and natural talent. He didn't know how to lose, and he was about to learn the lesson in the worst possible way. While Hartley's world collapsed around him, Reeves was already 3 moves ahead. She'd studied the tactical display on her data slate, analyzed Alpha's remaining positions, calculated their likely response to the ongoing assault, and identified the winning move: the sewer system. The Crucible's designers had built a perfect replica of a Middle Eastern city complete with underground infrastructure. But in their attention to detail, they'd made a critical oversight. The motion sensors didn't extend below ground. The AI didn't monitor the sewers. It was a blind spot, a gap in coverage. And Reeves had known about it since her second reading of the technical manual. She pulled up the schematics on her data slate: 12 kilometers of tunnels beneath the city. Most of them collapsed or blocked. But 3 routes remained clear. 3 paths that could take someone from the outskirts directly to the heart of Alpha's command. She plotted her course, memorized the turns, counted the paces. Then she sent one final message through the ghost frequency: "All Bravo units, continue current operations. Keep Alpha engaged. Do not pursue. Repeat, do not pursue. Hold positions and maintain pressure. Ghost out." Then she shut down the data slate, secured it in her pack, checked her equipment one final time, and descended into the darkness. The sewer was exactly as the schematics promised: damp, dark, the kind of environment that would break most people's situational awareness. But Reeves had trained in worse, had navigated the caves of Afghanistan with nothing but a compass and a chem light, had moved through Syrian tunnels while artillery pounded overhead. This was easy. She moved by counting paces. Her father had taught her this trick in 1998, in their backyard, making her walk blindfolded while counting steps. "Your eyes can deceive you, Elle, but numbers don't lie. Trust the math. 200 paces north. Turn right. 300 paces east. Turn left. 150 paces north." She emerged from a manhole 2 blocks behind Hartley's command post. The street was empty. Alpha Company's entire force was engaged forward, trying to contain the Bravo insurgency. No one was watching the rear. No one expected a threat from behind. Classic mistake. Reeves moved through the urban environment like a shadow given purpose. Her movements were economical to the point of invisibility. Every step placed deliberately. Every pause calculated. She'd learned this from her father, who'd learned it from operators who'd infiltrated enemy compounds in Grenada and Panama and a dozen other places that didn't make the history books. Hartley's command post was a hardened position. 6 sentries, overlapping fields of fire, motion sensors at the entrances, but not at the rear service entrance. Because who would be stupid enough to attack the command post from behind? Reeves picked the lock in 14 seconds. Mechanical lock, old-fashioned. The kind that couldn't be hacked but could be defeated with skill and patience. She'd learned this at the farm, where CIA trainers taught her that sometimes the oldest techniques were the best. The door opened silently. She slipped inside, let it close behind her with a whisper of air. The interior was lit with red emergency lighting, power still compromised from the EMP strike. Hartley was hunched over the one functional tactical display, surrounded by his staff screaming into his headset. "I don't care what you're seeing, push forward. We have superior numbers. We're going to win this. But his voice had lost its confidence, had gained an edge of desperation. Reeves moved through the shadows of the command post, 10 feet behind Hartley, then 8, then 6. Her breathing was controlled. Free diving technique from SEAL cross training. Shallow breaths, silent, invisible. One of Hartley's staff officers turned, almost looking in her direction. She froze, became a statue, a nothing. The officer's eyes passed right over Hero, saw the shadows and nothing else. He turned back to the display. Reeves continued, 4 feet behind Hartley now, close enough to hear his ragged breathing, close enough to smell his fear. She could end it now. Tap his shoulder, finish the simulation, claim victory for Bravo Company. But that would be too easy, too quick, too merciful. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. A ghost doesn't just defeat the enemy, L. A ghost teaches them why they lost. She pulled out her data slate, sent one final message through the ghost frequency. All Bravo units, final assault, 60 seconds, all positions, maximum pressure. Make them remember. Above ground, across the simulated city, the remnants of Bravo Company unleashed everything they had left. Coordinated strikes from a dozen positions. IEDs detonating in sequence. Sniper fire from impossible angles. Assault teams hitting weak points simultaneously. Alpha Company's last organized resistance shattered. On Hartley's tactical display, blue icons started turning gray. Casualties. Lots of them. His forces were collapsing faster than he could reinforce. No, 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 he was muttering. This isn't possible. This isn't how it's supposed to go. His staff officers stood frozen, helpless, watching their perfect victory turn into a perfect disaster. And then Hartley spun around. Maybe he heard something. Maybe he felt a presence. Maybe some ancient survival instinct finally activated. He turned and found himself staring at Cadet Elena Reeves. She was standing in his command post, in the red emergency lighting, covered in dirt and sewer grime, a scrape on her cheek from her fall that morning. A slight limp he'd caused when he shoved her down the stairs, but her eyes were calm, her posture relaxed, and she was smiling. Just barely. But she was smiling. Hartley's hand went to his simulated sidearm, drew it with shaking fingers, pointed it at the ghost who just walked through his defenses like they didn't exist. How he managed. How did you get past my guards? Reeves didn't answer, didn't speak, just raised her hand in a slow, deliberate motion, tapped her own shoulder twice, the universal signal for a friendly soldier, then reached out toward Hartley's shoulder, her finger extended, moving at the speed of inevitability. Time seemed to slow. In the observation deck, all three generals were on their feet. The main tactical display showed Bravo Company's impossible victory. The secondary monitor showed Reeves's hand inches from Hartley's shoulder, about to deliver the final devastating touch. General Matt whispered, "She's going to win. She's actually going to win." General Pierce was analyzing data streams, his face pale. Efficiency increase of 380% in 18 minutes. Command structure, non-existent. Coordination perfect. This is the most sophisticated insurgent simulation I've ever seen. And she did it alone. General Thorne said nothing, just watched. His old friend's daughter, David Reeves's legacy, the ghost who'd learned every lesson and added her own. On the screen, Reeves's finger touched Hartley's shoulder. A chime echoed through the command post, musical and final. The synthesized voice of the Crucible's AI filled the space. Cadet Captain Bradford Hartley. Status neutralized. Command structure decapitated. Alpha Company mission status. Failure. The world froze. Then the simulation ended. The holographic city vanished. The sounds of battle ceased. The harsh, flat lighting of the training facility returned. Silence fell across the massive arena. 200 cadets stood frozen, staring at their status indicators in complete disbelief. Every screen showed the same impossible result. Victory. Bravo Company. In 47 runs of this scenario, Bravo had never won. Until today. Until her. Hartley stood in his darkened command post, his face a mask of utter humiliation and confusion. The girl he'd mocked. The ghost he'd shoved down the stairs. The nothing he'd dismissed as too weak for this world. She had just destroyed him. without firing a shot, without raising her voice, without giving him the satisfaction of anger or triumph or anything except that small, terrible smile. Reeves lowered her hand, stepped back, and in a voice that was quiet and professional and absolutely devoid of emotion, said 6 words that would echo through West Point's halls for generations. Some people just aren't cut out for the pressure. His own words, thrown back at him, a mirror held up to his arrogance. Then she turned and walked out of the command post, her slight limp, the only evidence of the morning's assault, leaving Hartley standing in the ruins of his perfect record and his unearned confidence. In the observation deck, the silence was absolute. The instructors stared at the results, their mouths open. This scenario was supposed to be unwinnable, was designed to be unwinnable, and she'd won it alone. General Thorne broke the silence with 4 words that changed everything. "Get me her file." His aide, a young captain, looked confused. "Sir, we have her cadet file." "It's not her cadet file." Thorne's voice was ice and iron. "Her service jacket, everything, authorization level, eyes only. Triple star minimum." The aide's face went pale. "Sir, that requires—" "I know what it requires. Do it. Now." And the captain scrambled to comply, pulling up secure terminals, entering authorization codes, bypassing firewalls with emergency overrides. On the main screen, Reeves emerged from the command post, walked across the empty simulation floor. Her fellow Bravo cadets were erupting in celebration around her, but she moved through them like a ghost, untouched and untouching. She found her rucksack, shouldered it, checked her compass one final time, and disappeared into the crowd. General Matt was shaking his head in wonder. "I've seen a lot in 30 years. Never seen anything like that." General Pierce was still analyzing data. The encryption on those messages, the tactical doctrine, the exploitation of system weaknesses. This isn't cadet-level knowledge. This is Tier 1, Thorne finished. This is exactly what David Reeves taught Project Chimera operators in 1984. Asymmetric warfare, decentralized command, turning weakness into strength. The aide returned with a tablet. His hands were shaking. "Sir, the file is ready, but it requires triple-star authorization to decrypt." Thorne took the tablet, put it on the main screen. "Sir, this is a training facility. Yeah, and don't have—" "Figure it out, Captain. That's an order." The technicians worked frantically. Rerouting systems, establishing secure links. The main screen flickered, changed from the tactical display to a login prompt. File Reeves E-classification, top secret. No foreign authorization required, 3-star minimum. Thorne stepped forward, entered his authorization code. "General Jonathan Thorne, authorization 1 of 3. Accepted." General Matt followed. "General David Matt, authorization 2 of 3. Accepted." General Pierce was the last. "General Robert Pierce, authorization 3 of 3. Accepted." Triple-star validation complete. Decrypting file. The screen went black, then flooded with information that made every instructor in the room take an involuntary step back. This was no cadet file. This was a legend written in classified ink and sealed blood. Unit Strategic Operations Group 7, Project Chimera. The words hung on the screen like an accusation. Half the people in the room had never heard of SOG 7. The other half had heard the rumors and dismissed them as ghost stories. They weren't stories. The file scrolled. Awards and decorations appeared in a list that read like a greatest hits of American valor. Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star with 4 oak leaf clusters, Bronze Star for Valor, Purple Heart twice, the Intelligence Star. Each one represented a mission, a moment of impossible courage, a secret that would never be fully told. Combat history, redacted Eastern Europe, redacted Horn of Africa, redacted Syria, redacted Afghanistan. Specialty skills appeared next. Asymmetric warfare doctrine, master level, infiltration and exfiltration expert, psychological operations advanced, cyber warfare advanced, languages fluent in 5, proficient in 2 more, combat hours 847, higher than most of the instructors in the facility combined. Current assignment, deep cover audit and assessment of West Point Military Academy training, doctrine and institutional culture. Rank Major, codename Ghost. The observation deck was silent enough to hear hearts breaking. Hartley, who had been brought up to account for his catastrophic failure, stood frozen, his face drained of all color. His knees actually buckled. A staff officer caught him before he fell. The girl he'd mocked was a major. The ghost he'd shoved down the stairs was a decorated war hero. The nothing he'd dismissed was a Tier 1 operator sent to judge them all. Every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, every moment of casual cruelty came crashing back with the weight of cosmic irony. He'd assaulted a superior officer. He'd fostered institutional rot. He'd failed every test of leadership. And he'd done it all while the best soldier in the room watched and took notes. General Thorne's voice cut through the silence like artillery. "Cadet Captain Hartley, do you understand what you're looking at?" Hartley couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "That woman you shoved down the stairs this morning, that ghost you mocked, that's Major Elena Reeves, daughter of Colonel David Reeves, founder of Project Chimera. She's killed more enemy combatants than you've fired simulated rounds. She's conducted operations in 7 countries that you'll never know the names of. She's bled for this nation in ways you can't begin to comprehend." Thorne stepped closer. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire room. "And you put your hands on her." The words landed like physical blows. "Sir, I didn't." "You didn't know, that's the problem. You should have known better anyway. You should have treated every cadet with respect regardless of their family name or their appearance or whether you thought they were worthy of your time." Thorne turned to address the entire room. Every instructor, every cadet, every person who'd witnessed the morning's assault and done nothing. For 6 hours, one of America's finest soldiers walked these halls, and we let her be humiliated. We let her be assaulted. We let toxic leadership flourish because we cared more about legacy than competence. He pointed at the screen, at Reeves's service record. That ends today. On the main screen, the file continued to display, mission after mission, award after award. The story of a soldier who'd given everything for a nation that didn't know her name. And somewhere in the facility, Major Elena Reeves sat in a quiet corner, writing her after-action report, while the institution she had just broken struggled to understand what had happened. The ghost had taught her lesson. Now came the reckoning. The silence in the observation deck lasted exactly 11 seconds. Then General Thorne moved and the world shifted with him. "Major Carson," he said to the lead instructor, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades and too many wars. "Summon Major Reeves, full assembly, main auditorium, every cadet, every instructor, every officer on this post, 30 minutes. Carson's face had gone pale when the file revealed Reeves's true rank. Now it was ashen. "Sir, the debriefing protocols are canceled. This is no longer a training evaluation. This is a national security incident." Thorne turned to his aide. "Get me a secure line to the Joint Chiefs. Authorization code Broken Arrow Protocol." The aide's hands shook as he reached for his phone. Broken Arrow was reserved for nuclear incidents and catastrophic institutional failures. Using it meant heads would roll, careers would end. And everyone in this room knew it. General Matt stepped forward. His voice was controlled, but barely. "Jonathan, we need to think about this. If we go public with her identity, we expose Project Chimera. We expose 25 years of classified operations." "Good," Thorne said. "Maybe it's time people understood what we've forgotten, that the best warriors aren't always the loudest. That competence doesn't announce itself with family names and pedigrees." General Pierce was already on his tablet pulling up protocols. "If we're doing this, we need to lock down the facility. No communications in or out. This can't leak until we control the narrative." "Do it," Pierce nodded to a technician. "Initiate base-wide lockdown. Authorization Pierce 7 Alpha." Across West Point's campus, claxons began to blare. The sound was reserved for the gravest emergencies. Active shooters, terrorist attacks, the kind of crisis that turned a military academy into a fortress. The synthesized voice of the emergency broadcast system echoed from every speaker. "Attention all personnel. By order of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, this facility is now under complete and total lockdown. All external communications are severed. All gates are sealed. Remain in your current locations and await instructions." This is not a drill. The effect was instantaneous. Cadets froze in hallways. Instructors looked up from their desks. The entire academy, a symbol of American military might, became a prison in the space between heartbeats. And in a quiet corner of the facility, Major Elena Reeves looked up from her after-action report, noted the lockdown announcement with professional detachment, and went back to writing. She'd expected this. Had planned for it, actually. The auditorium could hold 1,200 people when packed. Today, it held 1,143. Every cadet from all four classes, every instructor, every staff officer, every civilian employee who happened to be on post when the lockdown hit. They filled the seats in tense silence. Rumors had already started spreading. A terrorist threat, a training accident gone catastrophic, a visiting dignitary assassinated. The speculation grew wilder with each passing minute because the truth was too impossible to imagine. Hartley sat in the front row, flanked by two military police officers. Not under arrest, technically, but not free either. His uniform was still pristine, his posture still regulation straight, but his eyes were the eyes of a man who just watched his entire world collapse and was waiting for the rubble to finish falling. The three generals entered from the rear of the auditorium. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. They walked down the center aisle with the deliberate pace of men delivering a sentence. General Matt took the stage first. He didn't use the podium, didn't need notes. Just stood at the front, his hands clasped behind his back, and spoke in a voice that had commanded battalions through hell. For years we have heard whispers that this academy has become soft, that it breeds arrogance instead of honor. We dismissed it as rumor. We told ourselves that our traditions were sound, that our methods were proven, that our legacy was secure. He paused, let the words settle like snow on a battlefield. Today we saw the truth, and the truth is devastating. A rustling in the audience, confusion spreading like ripples in a pond. You have mistaken pedigree for potential. You have confused volume with value. You have created a culture where a bully like Cadet Captain Hartley is seen as a leader and a true warrior is invisible. Matt's gaze swept the room. 1,100 faces, some confused, some defiant, some beginning to understand. You are not training soldiers. You are training a social club for the well-connected. And it ends today. He turned, gestured to the MPs flanking Hartley. Cadet Captain Hartley, front and center. Hartley stood. His legs almost didn't support him. He marched forward with mechanical precision, stopped 3 feet from the stage, and saluted. General Matt did not return it. The insult hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. You are a disgrace to that uniform, Matt said. His voice was low and dangerous. You laid hands on a superior officer. You fostered a culture of disrespect. You failed in your duty of leadership. And worst of all, you are a fool. Hartley flinched like he'd been struck. You stood in the presence of greatness and saw only weakness because you were blinded by your own pathetic ego. Matt turned to address the assembly again. But Cadet Hartley is not the problem. He is a symptom. The problem is us, the instructors who enabled him, the system that rewarded him, the culture that told him his family name mattered more than his character. General Pierce took the stage next. Where Matt had been fire, Pierce was ice, clinical, precise. He pulled up data on the massive screen behind him. In the past 18 months, we have tracked 3 incidents of leadership failure by West Point graduates in combat zones, 12 soldiers dead in Afghanistan, 4 Marines dead in Syria, an entire battalion compromised in Iraq. The common factor: officers who believed their academy credentials made them infallible, who refused to listen to subordinates, who mistook arrogance for confidence. The data appeared on screen. Names, dates, casualty reports. The faces of dead soldiers stared out at the assembly. Those deaths are on us, every one of them, because we taught these officers the wrong lessons. We taught them that they were special because of where they came from, not what they could do. We taught them that leadership means commanding, not listening. We taught them that legacy matters more than competence. Pierce's voice cracked slightly. We failed them, and they died because of it. The auditorium was silent as a tomb. Then General Thorne took the stage. He stood for a long moment saying nothing, just looking out at the sea of gray uniforms, at the future officers who would lead America's wars for the next 40 years. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, conversational, like he was telling a story to old friends. 1983, Cold War. The Soviets were winning the intelligence war. We were losing operatives faster than we could train them. We needed something different, someone different. So a colonel named David Reeves proposed Project Chimera. On the screen behind him, an old photo appeared. A young officer in dress uniform, strong jaw, kind eyes, the kind of face that inspired trust. Colonel Reeves believed that the future of warfare wasn't in tanks and planes. It was in minds, in soldiers who could think like the enemy, who could operate without support, who could win wars the enemy didn't know they were fighting. More photos appeared, training operations, deployment photos, the gradual documentation of a program so classified that most generals never knew it existed. Project Chimera graduates operated in Grenada in 1983, in Berlin in 1987, in Panama in 1989, in the Gulf War, in Bosnia, in Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria. They were ghosts, the best of us, operating in the shadows, saving lives we'll never know about, fighting wars we'll never acknowledge. Thorne's voice hardened. Colonel David Reeves died in Fallujah in 2003, leading a rescue operation to save 14 Tier 1 operators who were pinned down by insurgents. He went in with 2 men and got them all out. He didn't make it back. The photo changed, a flag-draped coffin, a memorial service, a young woman in dress uniform, maybe 17 years old, standing at attention beside her father's casket. He left behind a daughter, Elena, who followed in his footsteps. Who joined the Army? Who went through Ranger School and Special Forces selection? Who became one of the youngest operators ever accepted into Project Chimera? The screen filled with awards. Commendations. The documented proof of a career spent in the darkest corners of America's wars. Major Elena Reeves has conducted operations in 7 countries. She has 847 combat hours, 19 decorations, 5 languages. She has bled for this nation in ways most of you cannot comprehend. Thorne turned, looked directly at Hartley, and this morning Cadet Captain Hartley shoved her down a flight of stairs. The auditorium erupted, not in noise but in a collective intake of breath, the sound of 1,100 people realizing the magnitude of what they'd witnessed. She was here on a classified mission, deep cover audit of this institution's culture and training doctrine. She was supposed to observe, to assess, to report back. Thorne's smile was cold and sharp. Instead, she gave us the most important lesson this academy has seen in 50 years. She proved that competence doesn't need to announce itself, that true strength is quiet, that the most dangerous warrior in any room is the one you don't see coming. He gestured to the MPs at the rear entrance. Major Reeves, please come forward. The auditorium doors opened, and Elena Reeves walked in. She was still wearing her cadet uniform, still dirty from the sewer navigation, still carrying the scrape on her cheek from the morning's fall, still favoring her right leg with that barely perceptible limp. But something was different. The mask of mediocrity was gone. The deliberate invisibility had been set aside. She walked down the center aisle with the measured pace of a professional soldier, and every person in that room felt the difference. This wasn't a cadet trying to blend in. This was a major who'd earned every step through blood and competence. The cadets and instructors began to stand, not at attention, not in formation, just rising from their seats in a wave of instinctive respect that spread from the front row to the back. 1,100 people standing for one woman. Reeves reached the front of the auditorium, stopped beside Hartley, who stood rigid with terror and shame. The contrast was stark. The bully and the professional, the fraud and the genuine article, the loud assumption and the quiet truth. General Thorne stepped down from the stage. Generals Matt and Pierce followed, 3 men with 9 stars between them, 3 of the most powerful officers in the United States military, and they stood before a major in a dirty cadet uniform. Then in perfect synchronization, they raised their hands in a slow, deliberate, deeply respectful salute. The sound of their palms hitting their brows was like a gunshot in the silent auditorium. For 3 seconds, the tableau held. 3 generals saluting a subordinate. An act that violated every protocol, that shattered every expectation, that communicated more than any speech ever could. Then the wave broke. Every instructor scrambled to their feet, arms snapping up. Every officer followed. Every single cadet, even those who didn't understand what was happening, raised their hands in salute. 1,143 people saluting one woman. The auditorium became a forest of raised hands, a silent, powerful testament to a truth that had been revealed at terrible cost. Hartley was the last to move. His hand came up slowly, clumsily, his face a mess of confusion and fear and dawning understanding. He was saluting the ghost he'd tried to exorcise, the quiet woman who'd dismantled his world without raising her voice, the superior officer he'd assaulted because he'd been too blind to see what was standing in front of him. Reeves held the salute for exactly the regulation 3 seconds. Then she dropped her hand. The auditorium followed 1,100 arms lowering in a wave. She didn't speak, didn't need to. Her presence said everything that needed to be said. General Thorne broke the silence. Major Reeves has prepared a comprehensive report on her observations. It details systemic failures in our training doctrine, our institutional culture, and our fundamental understanding of what it means to be a leader in the modern military. He turned to the assembly. Over the next 30 days, this academy will undergo the most comprehensive review in its history. Every instructor will be evaluated. Every training protocol will be examined. Every tradition will be questioned. His voice rose. And anyone who cannot adapt to a culture that values competence over pedigree, results over rhetoric, and character over connections, will be invited to seek employment elsewhere. The message was clear: change or leave, no exceptions, no appeals. General Matt stepped forward. Cadet Captain Hartley, you are hereby stripped of your rank and all privileges associated with it. You will be recycled to first-year status. You will start over from day one, and you will earn back every single shred of respect you lost, or you will break trying. 2 MPs moved forward. In front of the entire assembly, they removed Hartley's rank insignia, his company commander tabs, his senior class pins. Each piece of brass that had marked him as someone special was taken away, leaving him in the plain, unadorned gray of a first-year cadet. It was a humiliation more complete than any physical punishment could provide, and it was broadcast to every person who had ever followed him, feared him, or enabled him. Hartley stood, rigid, tears streaming down his face as his entire identity was stripped away piece by piece. When it was done, Matt spoke again. 6 other cadets have been identified as active participants in the culture of bullying and harassment. They will receive the same treatment. The rest of you are on notice. The old West Point died today. What comes next is up to you. Thorne turned to Reeves, spoke quietly enough that only the front rows could hear. Major, do you have anything you'd like to say? Reeves looked out at the assembly, at the sea of faces watching her with mixtures of awe and fear and confusion. She could give a speech, could deliver a lecture, could use this moment to make a point. Instead, she said 4 words, the same 4 words her father had taught her 27 years ago in a backyard in North Carolina. Earn silent, prove loud. Then she turned and walked out of the auditorium, her slight limp the only sound in the absolute silence, leaving behind an institution that would never be the same. The investigation that followed was conducted by an external team from the Inspector General's office. They interviewed every cadet who'd witnessed harassment, every instructor who'd looked the other way, every staff officer who'd enabled the culture of entitlement. The findings were damning: systematic failure at every level, instructors who graded based on family connections, training protocols that rewarded aggression over thoughtfulness, a culture that valued tradition over adaptation, legacy over merit, and confidence over competence. The report was 237 pages of institutional autopsy, and at its heart was a simple truth: West Point had forgotten what it was supposed to be. Major Reeves spent 3 days locked in a secure room, writing her own report. It was brutal in its honesty. Every systemic flaw documented, every cultural failure cataloged, every weakness exposed. But it wasn't a vengeful document. For every problem she identified, she proposed 3 solutions. Her recommendations were revolutionary but practical, grounded in her experience operating in the gray spaces between conventional warfare and pure chaos. Mandatory courses in asymmetric warfare doctrine, cultural empathy training, psychology of insurgency, Regular red team exercises where Tier 1 operators would infiltrate the student body to test for institutional blind spots. A complete restructuring of the Crucible simulation to include unwinnable scenarios. Not to teach cadets how to win, but to teach them how to adapt when winning isn't possible. And most importantly, a ruthless meritocracy. Performance over pedigree, results over rhetoric, character over connections. The Academy's board of directors fought it. Alumni associations protested. Families with generations of West Point legacy threatened to pull funding. The three generals didn't care. They had the backing of the Joint Chiefs. They had the evidence of dead soldiers who'd been failed by the old system. And they had the moral authority of being absolutely devastatingly right. The West Point Reformation began. 30 days after the lockdown, the gates reopened. But what emerged was different. Harder, more honest, more dangerous in all the right ways. The first wave of changes was immediate. 15 instructors were reassigned, not fired, not punished, but moved to positions where their inability to adapt wouldn't infect the next generation of officers. The Crucible simulation was completely overhauled. New scenarios added, unwinnable situations designed not to break cadets, but to teach them that sometimes survival is victory, that sometimes the best you can do is save who you can save and learn from the rest. The Reeves scenarios, they were called unofficially, the ghost training, the curriculum was gutted and rebuilt. Less time on parade drill, more time on cultural intelligence, less emphasis on individual heroics, more focus on team dynamics, and the kind of quiet professional competence that won wars nobody knew about. And through it all, one physical change marked the transformation more than any policy update ever could. The stairs of legacy were still there, still granite, still carved from battlefield bedrock. But now the third step from the bottom was left unmarked by cadet feet. They walked around it, a small, unspoken tribute to the woman who'd fallen there and proven that getting back up was more important than never falling. Some cadets started touching the wall beside it for good luck before major exams. The tradition spread. Within months, the stone was polished smooth by thousands of hands, seeking the blessing of the ghost who taught them that strength doesn't announce itself. They called it the auditor's step. Major Elena Reeves never returned to West Point. After submitting her report, she disappeared back into the classified world where ghosts operated and legends were born in silence. But her presence lingered, in the revised training manuals, in the new emphasis on listening over commanding, in the quiet respect that replaced loud arrogance as the currency of leadership. 1 year after the lockdown, the Academy held its first orientation for the incoming class under the new doctrine. 400 fresh-faced cadets, nervous and excited, gathered at the base of the stairs of legacy. Command Sergeant Major Williams, a veteran of 3 wars and more firefights than he could count, stood before them. He was old-school Army, hard edges and harder lessons. The kind of NCO who'd seen everything twice and been impressed by none of it, until he'd seen the footage of Major Reeves's Crucible run. "Look at these steps." Williams began, his voice carrying the rasp of too many years breathing desert sand and mountain cold. "A year ago on this very spot, the best soldier I have ever known was shoved to the ground because she was quiet, because she didn't fit in, because a fool mistook her discipline for weakness." The cadet stood silent, listening. "That soldier, disguised as one of you, proceeded to single-handedly defeat our best-equipped, best-trained unit in a full-scale simulation. She broke our Army to save our Army. She showed us what we'd forgotten. That competence doesn't need a microphone. That strength doesn't need validation. That the quietest person in the room might be the most dangerous." Williams paced slowly, his eyes scanning the young faces. "Your time here will be hard. You'll be tested. You'll fail. You'll get back up. But the most important test won't be on any battlefield. It'll be right here." He tapped his chest. "In how you treat the person next to you, in your ability to see strength in places you don't expect. In whether you choose to lead through fear or through earned respect." He gestured to the stairs. "We don't build warriors anymore. We build professionals. And professionalism is quiet, it's competent, it's deadly when it needs to be, and compassionate when it can be. It earns silent and proves loud." The cadets absorbed this. Some understood immediately. Others would learn through hard experience. But all of them felt the weight of the moment. Near the stairs, unnoticed by most, a lone figure in a plain cadet uniform knelt by the brass railing. He worked with quiet focus, polishing the metal with methodical care. His movements were practiced, humble, almost meditative. It was Bradford Hartley. He'd requested this duty. Every morning before classes, he cleaned the stairs of legacy. It wasn't punishment. No one had ordered him to do it. It was his choice, his penance, his reminder. A young first-year cadet struggled past his rucksack, overloaded and poorly packed. The weight shifted. The cadet stumbled. Gear spilled across the steps. Before anyone could react, Hartley was there. He didn't say a word, just knelt beside the struggling cadet and began helping gather the scattered equipment. "You're packing it wrong," Hartley said quietly. "Here, watch." He showed the proper weight distribution, the correct strap adjustment, the small technical details that made the difference between a manageable load and a breaking back. The young cadet watched, grateful. "Thank you, sir." Hartley flinched at the honorific. "Not sir, not anymore, just a cadet, same as you." "What's your name?" "Hartley, first year." The young cadet nodded, hoisted his properly packed rucksack, and continued up the stairs with considerably more ease. Hartley returned to polishing the railing. His hands were steady. His expression was calm. But anyone who'd known him a year ago wouldn't recognize this quiet, helpful version of the man who'd once ruled through fear and family name. He'd learned the lesson the only way it could truly be learned, through total abject humility, through the destruction of ego and the slow, painful reconstruction of character. He would never be the man he was before. That man was dead, killed by a ghost on a set of granite stairs. What rose from those ashes was something different, not perfect, not redeemed, but genuinely trying. And in the new West Point, genuine effort mattered more than perfect pedigree. In the Academy library where Major Reeves had spent so many quiet hours reading technical manuals and tactical doctrine, a new section had been established. The Strategic Studies Collection. Open to all cadets, unrestricted access. On the main shelf, prominently displayed, was a copy of the complete Crucible Technical Manual, all 1,247 pages, with detailed annotations explaining the 19 weaknesses that Major Reeves had exploited. Next to it, a simple placard, "Know your battlefield." All of it. The enemy studies the manual to follow it. The ghost studies it to break it. The library had become a sanctuary again, but now cadets came not to hide from the rigorous physical demands of academy life, but to sharpen the mental edge that separated good soldiers from exceptional ones. In the grand hall, where portraits of stern generals had stared down at cadets for 2 centuries, a new addition appeared. An empty portrait frame. No picture, no name, just a small brass plaque beneath it. The auditor. Competence is quiet. It became a rallying point, a reminder, a challenge to every cadet who walked past it to ask themselves, am I earning silent? Am I proving loud? The change wasn't universal. Some cadets resisted. Some families withdrew their legacies and took their money elsewhere. Some traditions died hard and fought their death every step. But the momentum was unstoppable, because the alternative was more dead soldiers, more failed officers, more wars lost not on the battlefield, but in the training grounds where arrogance was mistaken for leadership. 2 years after the Reformation, statistics began to emerge. West Point graduates under the new doctrine were receiving higher marks from their subordinates, better after-action reviews, fewer catastrophic failures in combat zones. The quiet competence was spreading, infecting the Army with a kind of professional excellence that had been dormant for too long. And somewhere in a classified location conducting operations that would never appear in any official record, Major Elena Reeves received the reports and allowed herself the smallest smile. Her father would have been proud. The compass he'd given her in 1998 sat in a display case now, donated to the Academy Museum, a small exhibit dedicated to Project Chimera and the operators who'd served in silence. The placard read, "Gift of Colonel David Reeves, 1998, carried by Major E. Reeves through 847 combat hours. A ghost never forgets." Visitors to the museum would stop, read the placard, study the worn brass compass, and wonder about the stories it could tell, the battles it had witnessed, the blood it had seen. But those stories remained classified, would stay classified for another 50 years probably, because the best operations were the ones nobody knew about. The best warriors were the ones nobody saw coming. On a cold morning in November, 3 years after the Stairs of Legacy incident, a small ceremony was held at the Academy, the dedication of a new training facility, the Reeves Center for Asymmetric Warfare Studies. The three generals were there, older now, closer to retirement, but still sharp, still carrying the weight of the decisions they'd made. They'd invited Major Reeves to attend, sent the invitation through encrypted channels, made it clear she could decline without any hard feelings. She'd sent back a two-word response, respectfully decline, because ghosts didn't attend their own memorials. But that evening after the ceremony, after the speeches, in the ribbon cutting, in the obligatory photos, Command Sergeant Major Williams was walking the grounds when he saw a lone figure standing at the base of the Stairs of Legacy. A woman in civilian clothes, average height, unremarkable features, the kind of person you would see on any street in any city and forget 5 minutes later. Except for the way she stood, the economy of movement, the professional calm of someone who'd learned to conserve energy because survival might depend on it 3 days from now. Williams approached slowly. "Ma'am?" She turned, and he saw her eyes, eyes that had seen things civilians couldn't imagine. That carried the weight of 847 combat hours and 19 decorations, and a father who'd died a hero. "Sergeant Major," Reeves said quietly, "just wanted to see it." The stairs, the change. Williams looked around, at the cadets moving with purposeful efficiency, at the quiet confidence that had replaced loud arrogance, at the culture of earned respect that had supplanted inherited privilege. "It worked," he said. "What you did, it actually worked." "Good." She pulled something from her pocket. A new compass, brass, unmarked. She set it on the third step from the bottom. The auditor's step. "For the next ghost," she said, "when they need it." Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the evening crowd, becoming invisible in the way only true professionals could. Williams watched her go, picked up the compass. It was warm, like it had been carried close to someone's heart. On the back, a simple engraving, "Earn silent, prove loud, Dr. 8, he smiled. Place the compass in the small memorial alcove beside the stairs, where future cadets would find it and wonder about its story. The legacy wasn't a statue or a building name. The legacy was the standard that moved forward. In every cadet who chose competence over arrogance. In every officer who led by example instead of volume. In every soldier who understood that true strength didn't need to announce itself. It simply was. The sun set over West Point, casting long shadows across the ancient granite and the river beyond. The Stairs of Legacy stood as they had for 2 centuries, bearing the weight of countless footsteps, and now the memory of one perfect fall. A fall that had taught an entire institution what it meant to get back up. Not with anger, not with complaints, not with demands for justice, but with quiet professional competence, with the understanding that the best revenge is to be better. The best lesson is the one taught through action. The best leadership is the kind that doesn't need a title to command respect. Somewhere in the world, another operation was beginning. Another threat emerging. Another war that would never make the news, and warriors who would never get the credit. And somewhere in that shadow world, Major Elena Reeves was already moving, already adapting, already being the ghost her father had trained her to be, earning silent, proving loud, forever honoring the compass that always pointed true north even when the world couldn't see which direction she was heading. The ghost was hunting, and the enemy would never see her coming.